Hello, my name is Dale Greenwell. I'm pastor of Ramsey Hills Baptist Church. Been pastoring for 32 years now, and I wanted to talk to you just a few minutes about if you're thinking about suicide. My father committed suicide, and so let me just tell you a little bit of story about what happened. He was in World War II, and he came home from the war. He had shrapnel in his head and always had a headache, just hurting all the time, and seemed to never get any relief from it. And so it was very painful for him through the years. And he was a deacon in the church early on when we were going to church as a boy. I was just a small boy. And at some point, my older brother, who was 10 at the time, went out on his bicycle while my dad went fishing. And my dad was going with some friends to just go fishing for the day. And he told him he'd take Johnny later. And so Johnny and my other brother got on their bicycles and went down to a store that was on the highway, two-lane highway. And so Johnny was hit by a car, and it's believed that it was a drunk driver, but never was able to prove that. But anyhow, Johnny died, and because my dad didn't take him on the fishing trip, then my dad always blamed himself for Johnny's death. And so in the meantime, the headaches got worse, and he was coming to church, but he was just trying to deal with it all, and did okay for a while. But at some point, some of his family who were alcoholics began to influence him, and he had been an alcoholic before, and so he began to drink again and got out of church completely. And when he would go to the VA, they would give him Valium, which alcohol and Valium are awful together. And so I was just a very small boy when all that was going on. And at one point, he just got worse and worse. And finally, when I was around 13 years old, he hanged himself in a drunken stupor. Now, I understand his pain. I understand that how hard that must have been to lose your firstborn son, and even felt like you were the cause of it. And I understand the pain he had in his head from the shrapnel. I haven't felt it, but certainly we've all had headaches. But to have one continually, I've not had that. So he had a lot of things that troubled him. And I believe he was a Christian man. He certainly proclaimed Christ, but turned back to the world because he seemed to not get as much relief as he wanted. And so it was a downhill battle for him, and finally then hanging himself. And so he left behind 6 other children and a wife doing that. And so my mom had to take over and began to take care of us. And she did the best she could, and she really did well compared to what she was up against. Never married again. But I've often thought about why he did that, and can't understand all the things that went on in his head. Certainly being in the war was something more than I know about because I've never been in one. But to leave your family and your wife behind because you're in pain is really selfish. Now, I don't mean to minimize his pain and don't mean to minimize his suffering, but what he did to us in taking his own life was something that caused us to feel like it was our fault. And for a long time, we really didn't even talk about it. We didn't say much to each other about it. We didn't talk to our mother about it. She didn't talk about it. We just went on about our lives, and feeling like that we were lesser people because of what happened, because of the situation, first of all, because of the drinking, and then next because he hanged himself. I remember going back to school after he had done that. I just started high school, and none of my friends really mentioned it, and I didn't either. And I was kind of glad at the time, but after a while, I felt like they didn't care. They didn't care for what I went through. But the selfishness is what comes to me when I think about the fact that he took his life to, to save some pain, to stop suffering. That's sad, but it was something he did to us too. And it's something that made me sad for many years. And to tell you the truth, I became a little bitter as a young man, as a teenage boy. And I finally realized the bitterness I was getting into and asked the Lord to help me to get out of it, and was able to do that. But if you're thinking about suicide, if you're thinking about doing something that is foolish like that, don't do it, because you have people who love you. You say, well, there's not many. Well, there may not be many, but there's somebody who loves you. There's somebody who's dependent on you. And if there is not, and there's just a small chance there's not another person that cares, Jesus does. And Jesus loves you. So don't take your life. The Bible calls it self-murder. And to kill yourself is to be a murderer of yourself. You don't have a right to take your life. And in so doing, it becomes one of the more selfish things you will ever do. So don't do that, please. Think about it twice. Think about the hurt you're going to leave behind. Think about the things that could happen because of doing that. And I hope you'll consider it. And so that's my take on it. It's one of the most selfish things a person could ever do, because you hurt those around you. You hurt those who you could influence. And if my dad had not done that, my life would have been much better and much different, I believe. If he could have gotten back in church and started serving the Lord like he should, and started letting the Lord give him grace and peace, I think our lives and our home would have been so much easier and so much better. And so I certainly do have great compassion for what he went through, although I couldn't feel his pain as a small boy. And if I could go back and try to comfort him as a small boy, I would try to do it, but I didn't know what to say or what to do. But anyhow, the selfishness that's involved there, please understand it's a selfish act, not just to mankind, but to God. God gave you life, and it's his place to take your life. It's his place to decide when you're going to die and how you're going to die. So make sure you take care of what he has given you. He's entrusted you with a life, and don't be selfish and give it up for some reason that causes you pain. And go to God and let him take care of that pain. Thank you, and God bless you.